Have you ever noticed how the moment you achieve something big, a promotion, a new car, a personal milestone, it feels amazing. And then, almost immediately, the excitement fades. That's the hedonic treadmill at work. Psychologists call it hedonic adaptation, the phenomenon where humans quickly return to a relatively stable level of happiness, no matter how much positive change happens in life. You win, you celebrate, and then life goes back to normal. And just like that, the thrill is gone. This might make you wonder, is happiness just an illusion? Are all our efforts to succeed destined to leave us wanting more? The answer is not so bleak. Understanding why we adapt and learning how to step off the treadmill can transform how you experience success, desire, and fulfillment. The concept isn't new. Ancient philosophers anticipated it centuries ago. Epicurus, for instance, distinguished between true pleasures, those that bring lasting contentment, and false pleasures, which are fleeting and dependent on external conditions. He argued that pursuing wealth, fame, or possessions doesn't create enduring happiness. Instead, cultivating friendship, self-reflection, and moderation leads to fulfillment. Buddhist teachings echo this. Desire itself is the source of suffering, and liberation comes from understanding impermanence and cultivating mindful contentment. Modern psychology confirms what they observed intuitively. Brickman and Campbell's research on hedonic relativism shows that people quickly adapt to both gains and losses. Lottery winners, for example, experience a surge of happiness, but studies find that within months, their overall satisfaction returns to baseline. Similarly, people who suffer major setbacks eventually return to their prior level of well-being. Our brains are wired to adapt, and that wiring keeps us running on a treadmill of desire. Here's a real story. A friend of mine, let's call her Sarah, worked her entire career chasing promotions. When she finally reached a top managerial position, she expected her life to feel complete. At first, she was ecstatic. She bought a bigger house, traveled more, celebrated with colleagues. But 6 months later, she felt the same stress, the same longing for the next milestone. Her happiness hadn't increased in a lasting way. It was only when she shifted her focus from external achievement to daily practices, gratitude journaling, cultivating relationships, and mindful moments, that she noticed a real, steady increase in satisfaction. This story illustrates the core message. Chasing external markers alone will never feel enough, because humans are wired to adapt. The treadmill isn't the failure of the individual. It's a feature of our mind. The challenge, then, is not to reject success or desire entirely, but to understand the mechanisms of adaptation and redirect energy toward practices that build lasting fulfillment. So, what practical steps can you take? First, practice gratitude. Research shows that regularly acknowledging the positive aspects of your life, even small ones, recalibrates the brain's reward system and reduces the hedonic adaptation effect. A daily gratitude journal or a simple reflection at the end of the day strengthens this habit. Second, focus on intrinsic goals. These are goals that are inherently satisfying: personal growth, learning, contribution to others, rather than extrinsic goals like money, fame, or appearance. Positive psychology consistently finds that people pursuing intrinsic goals experience more sustainable well-being. Third, cultivate mindfulness and present moment awareness. Mindfulness slows down adaptation by helping you savor experiences rather than rushing to the next desire. Buddhist practices of observing breath, sensations, or thoughts without judgment train the brain to find contentment in the present. Even short daily practices can reduce the pull of the hedonic treadmill. Think of the treadmill as a metaphorical machine in your life. Every time you acquire something new, it feels like a reward, but the machine doesn't stop. It resets, urging you to keep running. By practicing gratitude, pursuing intrinsic goals, and cultivating mindfulness, you step off the endless motion, at least partially. You still achieve, still grow, but you learn to appreciate and anchor your happiness in the present rather than the next external gain. Remember Dan Gilbert's observation in Stumbling on Happiness. We are remarkably poor at predicting what will make us happy in the long term. We often invest our energy in things that feel urgent or impressive, but that urgency doesn't equate to lasting fulfillment. Awareness of this tendency is the first step toward escaping the treadmill. The takeaway here is profound but simple. External success feels fleeting because of adaptation, but happiness is not entirely out of reach. By understanding the treadmill, observing your desires, and intentionally cultivating practices that nurture inner satisfaction, you can experience a richer, more lasting sense of well-being. In the next section, we'll explore how to break free from the treadmill and practical strategies you can implement today to ensure your success, achievements, and milestones contribute to enduring happiness rather than a fleeting spike of excitement. The key insight from the hedonic treadmill is that success and possessions alone cannot guarantee lasting happiness. Human minds are wired to adapt, to normalize gains and losses, which means every new achievement will eventually feel ordinary. But understanding this isn't a cause for despair, it's an opportunity. Once we recognize the mechanics of adaptation, we can consciously shift our focus toward sources of fulfillment that do not fade with novelty. Epicurus and Buddhist teachings both point in the same direction. Lasting satisfaction comes from cultivating internal richness rather than chasing external rewards. Friendship, personal growth, gratitude, mindfulness, and meaningful contribution are all sources of joy that resist the pull of adaptation. By intentionally nurturing these areas, we anchor our happiness in aspects of life that are less susceptible to the treadmill's relentless motion. 3 practical ways to apply this insight immediately. First, cultivate gratitude. Make it a daily habit to notice and appreciate what you already have. Even small things like a warm cup of tea, a kind word from a friend, or a quiet moment in nature. Gratitude slows the mind's adaptation process and deepens your experience of contentment. Second, focus on intrinsic goals. Shift attention from external markers of success to growth, learning, and contribution. These pursuits provide a sense of purpose and accomplishment that is more stable and enduring. Third, practice mindfulness. Engage fully with the present moment instead of constantly anticipating the next reward. Mindfulness allows you to savor achievements and pleasures fully, rather than racing toward the next milestone without noticing the current one. Think of it this way: life is not a race to accumulate more, it's a garden to cultivate. Each act of gratitude, each step toward intrinsic goals, and each mindful moment is like planting a seed. Over time, these seeds grow into lasting satisfaction, resilience, and inner peace. Unlike external acquisitions, which lose their luster quickly, the fruits of these practices continue to nourish your life. Ultimately, the hedonic treadmill does not trap you unless you allow it to. By understanding adaptation and redirecting energy toward practices that cultivate inner fulfillment, you step off the endless chase. You find that happiness is not in the next achievement, but in the depth, awareness, and appreciation of the life you are already living. True contentment is possible, and it begins with conscious choice, reflection, and the courage to cultivate what truly matters.